Beauty and the Beast. There was once a rich man who suddenly lost all his money. He took his lovely little daughter Beauty to live in a cottage in the country where she had to do all the work herself. But Beauty didn't mind a bit. She loved the sun and the flowers and was as happy as the day is long, cooking and washing and sewing. One day her father told her he must go on a journey and would perhaps not be back that night. "What should I bring you home for a present?" he asked. "I would love a white rose," said Beauty. "We have no white ones in our cottage garden." Off her father went, promising to bring her a beautiful white rose. He rode to a faraway town and soon did all that he had set out to do. He thought perhaps he would be able to get home before night, so he hurriedly mounted his horse and set off. But alas, before he had gone very far, a storm came and he lost his way. When night came, he found himself in a wood, but try as he might, he could find no way out of it. Suddenly, he spied a light far away in the distance. He rode towards it, thinking to find a woodsman's cottage. But to his great astonishment, he found that he had come to a huge palace with gates that stood wide open. He rode through them up a long drive and arrived at the palace door. "Why, this is open too," cried the man in surprise, "and there's no one to be seen. Well, I'll just walk in and see who I can find." He left his horse at the door and walked in. No one was about. The man went into the first room he saw and found there a great blazing fire and a table set with a lovely hot meal. "Good gracious," said the man, more and more surprised. "This is just what I want. It's too late for me to get home tonight, so I'll go and stable my horse and then come back and dry myself by this fire." He took his horse to the stable and then came back to the warm room. He called and shouted and called, but no one came. "Well, this meal is getting cold for want of being eaten," said the man, and straight away sat down and ate it. After that, he felt very sleepy and wondered if there were any beds to be found. He went into the next room and to his delight found a bed there all ready to be slept in. He undressed and jumped in. In the morning he found that his own muddy suit was gone and a lovely one of silver put in its place. "Well, what next?" cried the man as he jumped out of bed and dressed himself in silver cloth from top to toe. Breakfast was all ready for him in the next room and he ate a good meal. Then he called out "Thank you" and went to find his horse. On his way to the stable, he went through a lovely rose garden and suddenly saw a beautiful bush of white roses. "Dear me," he said, stopping, "I didn't get Beauty her white rose. I'll pick her one of these and take it to her." He took hold of a beautiful bud and picked it. And then he jumped in fright and let it drop, for he heard a most terrible noise just behind him. He turned round and saw a huge and ugly beast on the path glaring at him. "So this is the way you repay me for your fine meals, bed and clothes," thundered the beast. "You steal my lovely white roses. You shall die." The poor man trembled and knelt down on the grass. Spare me," he begged. "I meant no harm." "I will spare you only if you bring me another life instead of your own," said the beast. "If you will bring me whatever meets you first when you get home, I will spare your life." The man got up gladly and promised. He thought that one of his dogs would meet him at first, and he hoped it would not be his favourite one. He ran to get his horse, mounted it, and set off home. As he got near, he looked out for his dogs, but alas, he saw none of them running to meet him, but instead his lovely daughter Beauty. "Welcome home, father," she cried. Then she stopped in distress, for he looked so sad and troubled. "What's the matter?" she asked. "Are you ill?" "Not ill, but terribly unhappy," said her father, and he told her all that had happened. "I promised to take the beast the first thing that met me when I got home," he groaned. "And you are that first thing, Beauty darling. But I shall not take you, of course. I shall go back myself." "No, take me, father," said Beauty bravely. "You made the beast a promise, and you must keep it. Perhaps he will not kill me." She begged so very hard that at last her father took her to the beast's palace. In the room where he had had supper and breakfast before was laid a delicious meal for two. The man told his daughter to sit down, and together they tried to eat, but both were so frightened and sad they could hardly touch anything. Suddenly they heard a terrible noise at the door, and in walked the great ugly beast. Poor Beauty hid her face in her hands in fright.
"Did you bring this young girl in exchange for your life?" asked the beast.
"She was the first thing that met me," stammered the man. "I've kept my promise to you, but I beg you to spare her and kill me instead."
"Don't be afraid," said the beast. "I shall not kill her, nor you. I will take great care of her, and she shall have everything she wants. Bid her goodbye."
The poor man kissed his sobbing daughter and left her. The beast took her to a room and told her it was hers. Beauty could hardly see it for tears, but when she dried her eyes she found herself in the most beautiful room she'd ever seen. Pictures, flowers, rugs, books, everything she could possibly want was there. There was a lovely mirror too, and under it was written a verse in gold letters. Beauty read it aloud. "Little Beauty, dry your eyes. Needless are those tears and sighs, gazing in this looking-glass. What you wish shall come to pass." That made Beauty feel happier, for she thought that if she felt too sad, she could just look into the glass and wish herself at home. Day after day passed, and Beauty lived in the Beast's palace. If she had not missed her father, she would have been very happy, for the palace and the gardens were beautiful, and she had everything she could possibly want. Every evening the Beast came to see her eat her supper. Beauty was very much afraid of him at first, but soon she grew used to him, for he was very gentle and kind, and never frightened her in any way.
"Beauty, do you think I am very ugly?"
the Beast asked one night. "Yes, I do," said Beauty sadly, "but you are very kind."
"Do you think I am very stupid?"
asked the Beast. "Oh, no," said Beauty. "You are a dear, gentle beast."
"Beauty, could you ever love me?"
asked the Beast. "I think I love you now," said Beauty, "because you are so kind to me."
"Oh, then do marry me,"
begged the Beast. "No, no," said Beauty, covering her face, and thinking she could never marry such an ugly creature, however kind and gentle he was. The Beast went out of the room looking very sad and unhappy, and said no more to her. Next day, Beauty suddenly thought she'd like to know how her father was. So she looked into the magic mirror in her room and wished that she might see there what he was doing. To her great dismay, she saw in the mirror a picture of her father lying ill in bed, with no one to look after him. She cried all day, and when the Beast came that evening, he saw how red her eyes were.
"Why, Beauty," he said, "what have you been crying for? Aren't you happy?"
"Oh, yes, Beast, I am usually," said Beauty, "but today I looked into my magic mirror and saw my father lying ill and all alone. Please, Beast dear, kind Beast, let me go home and look after my father."
"I shall be heartbroken if you leave me, Beauty," said the Beast, looking as if he too might cry at any moment. "But I can't bear to see you looking so unhappy, so you may go to your father and make him better."
"Oh, thank you, cried Beauty in delight. "When can I go?"
"Tomorrow," said the Beast sadly. "Look into your magic mirror tonight, Beauty, just before you get into bed, and wish to be home. Then in the morning you will wake up in your father's cottage."
The Beast looked so miserable at the thought of losing her that Beauty felt very sorry for him. "Don't look so sad," she begged him. "I will come back to you in a week."
"Alas, Beauty, I fear you will never come back once I let you go," said the Beast, sighing. "But see, here is a magic ring. If you want to come back, lay it on your table at home before you go to bed, and wish to be here again. Then the next morning you will wake up in my palace."
Beauty took the ring and wished him goodbye. He went out sadly and left Beauty alone. Before she went to sleep, she looked in the magic mirror and wished her wish and jumped into bed. Imagine how delighted she was the next morning to wake up in her own little bed in her father's cottage. She jumped out and ran straight into her father's room. "Father," she cried, "I've come back to look after you." Her father was so surprised and overjoyed to see her that he couldn't say a word to greet her. He just looked at her and smiled happily. Beauty began to nurse him and to give him all the good food he needed. She laughed and sang and danced, and soon her father began to laugh and sing too, and no longer needed to keep to his bed. A whole week went by, and Beauty forgot to keep count of the days. Then another week went by, and still Beauty forgot how quickly time went. She thought only of her father and of getting him well quickly. Then one night she had a very peculiar dream. She dreamt she was back in the palace gardens again, and saw the big ugly beast lying in the grass beneath the bush of white roses she loved so much. He looked ill, and he was saying sadly,
"Oh, Beauty, little Beauty, it is 2 weeks now that I have looked for you, and you have not come. My heart is broken, for I know I shall never see you again. I shall soon die for want of you."
Beauty woke up with a jump and began to think of the beast and how kind he had been to let her leave him and go home. Then she remembered that she'd said that she would go back to him in a week. "Oh, and dear me, said Beauty in dismay. "It must be quite 2 weeks since I have been home. Whatever must the poor beast be thinking? I will go back to him at once." She jumped out of bed and put her magic ring on the table. She wished to be back in the palace again, jumped into bed once more and fell asleep. Next morning she woke in her beautiful little bed at the palace. She wondered if the beast were anywhere about, but as he never came to visit her until evening, she had to wait all day. When she sat down to her supper, she listened for the beast's footsteps outside the door, but none came. She waited a little while and then began her supper. No beast came. Beauty couldn't make it out. She finished her supper and then sat quite still listening. But however much she listened, she could hear nothing at all. No footsteps, no knock at the door, and no deep voice. "Wherever can he be?" wondered Beauty miserably. "He always comes to talk to me at supper time. Is he cross with me?" She sat for another hour waiting, and then a thought came to her mind. She would go and find him. Up she jumped and ran out of the room. Up and down the castle she hunted, but nowhere could she find the beast. "He's nowhere indoors," said Beauty, and then she stopped and thought. Oh dear, she cried. "Perhaps my dream was true, and the poor beast is lying underneath my white rosebush." Off she ran into the moonlit garden, and there on the grass lay the poor ugly beast as if he were dead. "Beast, beast!" cried Beauty in fright. "Open your eyes and look at me. Here is Beauty come back to you. Open your eyes, dear beast." To Beauty's great delight, the beast opened his great brown eyes. He smiled with joy when he saw Beauty.
"My darling Beauty," he whispered gladly, "so you've come back to me. I thought you had gone forever, and I could not live without you. I shall die in happiness now that I know you've come back."
"You mustn't die, you mustn't die," cried Beauty, putting her arms around his neck. "I love you, beast, and I will marry you. Truly I will. You are so kind and gentle." She hid her face in her hands and began to cry, for she was very unhappy and grieved to find her beast so ill. When she looked up again to comfort him, he was gone. Beauty stared in astonishment for just a moment before the beast had laid on the ground. Then she heard a deep, gentle voice behind her.
"Thank you, Beauty, darling, for setting me free," said the voice.
Beauty jumped and looked to see who had spoken, and to her great astonishment she found standing by her a tall, handsome prince. "Who are you?" she cried. And what do you mean? What have you done with my dear beast? Where is he gone?"
"Hush, Beauty,"
said the prince, taking her hands in his and raising her from the ground.
"Don't be frightened. I was the beast. Long ago a wicked witch enchanted me and turned me into the ugly beast you knew. I had to remain ugly and stupid until a beautiful lady came and said she would marry me, and you, Beauty dear, are the beautiful lady."
Beauty looked at him in surprise and delight. So this was the ugly beast, this handsome, smiling young prince. How delighted she was. "Oh, please let my father know," she begged. And in 5 minutes a good fairy brought her father to her, and Beauty proudly showed him what had happened to the ugly beast. Then the wedding bells rang out, and Beauty and her prince were married. They lived happily in the lovely palace, and on every birthday that Beauty had, the prince picked a lovely bunch of white roses and put them on her plate and wrote by them, "To darling Beauty, from the Beast."